Existing home sale prices just hit a record high.
Okay, so I'm just checking. We're all unable to buy a house right now, right?
They found out that salaries have fallen by an average of 8.2%.
So do you remember back in 2022 when everybody was freaking out over the cost of houses? There was nothing but YouTube videos talking about the 2023 housing crisis and everything's gonna crash. And then when that didn't happen, you had everybody complaining about the 2024 prices and that how there's going to be a recession and the same thing as '08 and it's finally gonna crash because it just keeps going up. Well, we are now 7 months into 2024 and the latest information on real estate shows that it has just peaked in pricing after 18 months, almost 2 years worth of people actually starting to get squeezed from inflation, whether it be groceries, insurance, car payments, all of that. There are still people in the US paying absolute top dollar for houses. So right now the average home price is $419,000, but in this first video we're going to talk about all different places of the US instead of just the average over the entire country because it's vastly different all over. We're gonna go over some comments from your previous videos along with some clips and talk about it. So leave your comments down below and I'll pick some of them out for the next video. But we'll start off with some numbers so we could talk about some of the home prices all over the country.
If you're looking to buy a home, you may want to sit things out for a little while because existing home sale prices just hit a record high. According to May's existing home sales report released today by the National Association of Realtors, the median price for an existing home, which includes single-family, townhomes, condos, and co-ops, jumped 6% from last May to more than $419,000. That is the highest price recorded since the group started keeping track back in the 1960s. Now, $419,300 is the median price for all types of homes across the United States. But if you live in the West, brace yourself. The median home price there was almost $633,000, up 5.5% from last May. In the Northeast, the median existing home price was more than $479,000, also up from last May by more than 9%. In the South, the median existing home price was more than $374,000, up more than 3.5% from last May. And if you're trying to buy a home in the Midwest, your price went up too. You're looking at a median existing home price of more than $317,000, up almost 6.5% from last May. The National Association of Realtors said the high prices and the fact that mortgage payments for a typical home are more than double that of the homes purchased in 2020 is creating this wider and wider divide between those who already own a home and those who want to buy a home but can't. And that checks out when you look at the numbers in this report, which found the sale of existing homes between May of last year and May of this year dropped almost 3%, and the total number of registered homes sitting on the market as unsold inventory jumped 18.5% since last year.
Who's buying a home right now? I guess it's honestly only upper middle class and above. You saw through all of those stats everywhere in the country. It doesn't matter. Like, yeah, if you live in the Northeast, obviously it's going to be more expensive if you live like near NYC. Same thing with LA. Over in the West, that was way more. That was 630 around that. I mean, like me, living in the South now was around 375, which was up. And even the Midwest, which is always in like anybody's comment section talking about real estate at all, that magically just the answer is to go live in the middle of nowhere of Idaho and just buy a house there because it's super cheap, even though there's virtually no jobs there. But even if you live in the Midwest now, they've gone up in price. And from the rest of the statistics, I guess everybody's just sitting on their houses for sale because the inventory is way up and sales are down, but prices are still peaking. So I guess every seller is just trying to get that buyer that has made so much money in the past few years that it's fine to just buy a price way over the value of it still. I've been hearing about people doing this for more than 2 years now, and it's still happening. And if you saw one of my previous videos talking about the brackets of income, I'm pretty sure now the only people who are actually buying houses are legitimately upper middle class and then upper class. Because what kind of normal middle class people are actually able to afford a home that's been constantly rising in price, getting even more expensive and overvalued when you know the price of the house is just not worth it? Then you have a ton of people all over the country, just like this comment, growing up, you think you're supposed to graduate, go to college, find a job, and get a house. I'm a teacher making $60,000 and can't afford a house. It is my dream one day to have my own place, and it makes me sad that I don't have the income to do so. Again, this is somebody who's lumped into a massive amount of people who have gotten degrees, putting themselves into tens of thousands, if not like 100,000 plus worth of debt to get a degree, to get a good job like you were supposed to, and then realizing that the job that you got isn't nearly enough money to be able to afford a house now. And I'm not even talking in the realm of like being rich and owning a mansion and having a whole bunch of nice cars. This is just normal, basic American dream. In this clip real quick is just an overlay, is just the contrast between the how much income do you need to buy a house in 2024, and they have the whole listed prices right here. You could see from $250,000 all the way to almost $1 million house, all the incomes in between, and then you go over to the comments and people are not happy. The first one, you need $100,000 to $120,000 income to afford a $250,000 house, which is definitely overreaching. I mean, you easily be able to afford it. It would be the safer route in owning a home, but in just today's world, people are not like that. If people are making $120,000, they want like a $500,000 house so they could show it off and get an enormous piece of real estate that they really don't need. And that's why so many people are underwater or just straight up can't afford a house. And then you have one saying, I make $165K, but there's no way I'm buying a $650,000 home, because it's not just doing the 20% down payment and then the mortgage every month. If anything goes wrong in the house, you have to pay for it. Water heater, fridge goes out, I mean, washer and dryer, any sort of pipes burst, I mean, you name it. Anything goes wrong, it's your problem, along with a $650,000 note. Not even talking about the sky-high interest rates that we have right now. $165K is a solid amount of money, as long as you're basically not living in California. If you're living almost anywhere else other than that, and I would guess NYC and like Miami area, that's a good amount of money. But getting a house that's almost $700,000, or being allowed to at least by the bank, is the reason why there's so many people are underwater in their house and not being able to afford it anymore. And the whole issue with the housing crisis back in '08. It's crazy that home ownership is no longer tangible for 90% of people. And for $250,000, you end up getting a shack, which we'll see actually in the next clip we'll talk about. But at least where I live down south, there are no places at all in my town that are $250,000. There are only, I recently did look it up on Zillow, and I know there's other websites, the MLS, Realtor, all of these other sites, but I just looked it up. All the homes on sale in my town. There's over 70,000 people who live here, and there's only 130 houses listed at all right now, in general, from bare minimum price to the most expensive. And there are only 6 houses that are under $500,000 in my entire town. And I think the cheapest one was like $360,000. So this is why I'm renting here. If I wanted to stay here and actually buy a house, the amount of money that I would need to make would be honestly ridiculous, and renting here at least is the move right now. But here's another comment, hilarious. We make $400K and barely afford a $450 house. Insurance is $7,000 a year, and property taxes are ridiculous too. Again, it all depends on where you live. I know insurance for houses in Florida are crazy because of hurricanes, and insurance is like almost to the level of unbearable for normal people in Florida now. I know property taxes in the Northeast where I used to live are always crazy, around New Jersey. Same thing when you're in that general radius of New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, all of that. They could just jack up the cost of living there because they just assume that everybody makes a lot of money somehow just working in the city. And a lot of the time that's just not the case. But in this clip, we have a video that's definitely a trend on like the real estate side of TikTok, where they show a really nice house. I mean, it's your opinion because they're all over the place. They could be modern or really old, like Victorian houses, but generally what you get is way cheaper than what you'd think you'd be able to get in this area. But then there's always a catch-22. So you could see this place is in Donna, Texas. Never heard of it before. And for $275, so right over the $250,000, I mean, it's not a massive place, but this definitely looks like a really good deal, even though the outside of it does look weird. I mean, modern houses are kind of cool, at least in my opinion. The way that they look, I could definitely see them becoming very tacky very soon, just like the way this house looks. But again, for this cheaper price, that it seems like a really solid deal until you start going to the comments in this video, and then you actually see the truth of the property. I had to look up Donna, Texas. They have a lot of nice houses with high poverty. So these are companies that are taking land that is super cheap because nobody wants to move there, there, building a whole bunch of brand new houses and being able to flip them for a decent amount of money if anybody actually wants to move there, even though the whole area is pretty poor. So you most likely have a high crime rate, and what you'll see when I looked it up in a second when we go through a little bit more of these comments. Next comment with 3,500 likes. Yes, in the middle of nowhere, Texas. Beautiful house nonetheless. Nearest job is 50 miles away. Then I fired up Google Maps to find out where Adana, Texas is, because I've never been to Texas and I know Texas is massive. So when you look it up, you end up finding out that Adana, Texas is almost on the border of Mexico. You can see how far away Austin, Houston, and Dallas-Fort Worth is from Adana, Texas, which is where a majority of the people probably know about Texas. Big 3 cities there, and where a lot of people end up moving. So you have a whole bunch of brand new houses built in the middle of nowhere for dirt cheap in a place that's very high poverty near the border of Mexico. Like what does that spell out for a lot of people? It seems like it would not be a very safe place to live. And for anybody outside of the radius of Texas, including myself, that doesn't really know too much about the state at all, we're talking over 5 hours away from Austin. So I mean, you are really out there. No matter how nice or how much you like the house, for how much it actually costs and it being a good deal, I really don't think it would be worth it. And there's a lot of these type of TikToks that'll get a lot of attention because it'll just be a pretty decent house for a very cheap price. And then when you look up the area, either it's very dangerous to live in or it's actually in the middle of nowhere. This is kind of a double whammy. This is both of them, but at least it's not as bad as this next clip, which is just like the attention-seeking side of TikTok, where people just want to get likes and that dopamine hit of just getting more and more attention online, even though they're just straight up lying. Now here, you could just see this clip. It's just like so out of the realm of like reality that it doesn't make sense at all. $44,000 in Virginia for almost a 9,000 square foot house that would be so unbelievably big. Even a shell of a $9,000 house is definitely not worth $44,000. It is way, way more. Then you go into the comments, and I mean, I guess whoever did post this, it did end up working because there's almost 2,700 comments. You're missing some zeros. I'm from Virginia and nothing is that cheap here. And then yeah, $44,000 a month. You can't buy that for $44,000 anywhere in Virginia. I would venture to guess that you probably couldn't buy that size house for $44,000 in the entire country. But it was just such a ridiculous post that it did end up getting that attention. So there's a lot of stuff on the real estate side of TikToks that are just, I don't want to say all of it's deceiving. I mean, this video clearly did, but at least the previous video was that kind of too good to be true. And then when you really look it up, it's like, yeah, it's pretty cheap there because it's very dangerous too. So you have so many people all over the country not being able to afford a house. And I did talk about it in my video, saying that more and more people who are like mid-20s, 30s, even into like their 40s are still living with their parents. And a lot of the reason why isn't because, oh, they want to be a bum and sit and play Call of Duty all day. It's because they can't actually afford a house because they're not making nearly enough money to be able to put a down payment, let alone pay for all the expenses there are to own a house in today's world. And there's a lot of these comments that I've seen because honestly, it's all white people who want to get out and immediately have their own apartment, their own house at like 18, 21, 25. They're like skirting on the level of poverty just to get their own like really, really crappy apartment. But there's a lot of people around the world that are just not wired this way. And you could see by this comment, I'm 45 years old and I live with my mother of 81 years and my younger brother of 39. It's a Filipino household. We support each other in different ways. My mother and I both cook and clean. My brother fixes my car and he gardens. Mom is type 2 diabetes and I need to drive her to her doctor's appointments. My brother and I contribute to the household and we maintain the house. I buy the supplies and my brother installs. We were raised to take care of our elders. There are many comments on this video talking about different cultures. A lot of the Asian cultures. I also saw African. I mean, to be honest, it was basically every culture except white people would be fine being older, living with their parents, taking care of their parents, and also at the same time saving money because you don't have to pay for 2 separate households for everybody or 3, or getting a larger house and having like a lot of family members live there will clearly make it easier easier to survive when everybody could be contributing, and it's not like every one of them have to make $120,000 a year, which is like the mindset of a lot of millennials and Gen Z now. And it does just make life a lot easier, but I guess in today's world, we're not wired like that. I mean, the real estate market would definitely not like that either. They want everybody in their own separate house, paying all the bills and spending all of their money just to stay afloat in a house that is now overvalued in today's market.
Okay, so I'm just checking. We're all unable to buy a house right now, right? Like, I'm not the only one who runs the numbers every single day and looks at the budget and is just like, there is no way on earth that this is potentially feasible for me. Like, I'm working with two very average incomes. They're not great incomes, but they're fine incomes. Incomes that 10 years ago probably would have meant that we could buy a house. I digress. Anyway, we pay rent so that we can live somewhere, because when we got out of college, we had to rent so we could theoretically save money to eventually buy a home. Except rent is so astronomical that we are actually not able to save for a home. So subtracting that from what we bring home a month, like, yeah, there's still some money left. Except that somehow, no matter what I do, because we've cut back on everything, we've cut back on groceries, eating out, we haven't actually traveled in a while. We both work from home, so we shouldn't be paying that much for gas, but yet somehow we are. I'm going through my credit card statement at the end of every month, and I'm literally spending $20 here and there. Like, there are no big purchases on this credit card, but the groceries are killing us. But we also have to eat. We can't not eat. We need to put gas in the car because sometimes we do have to go places. But like, I can't figure out where this is coming from. Like, we're not huge shoppers. We eat at home most of the time. Compared to other people my age, we do not spend money on alcohol or drugs. I don't freaking Uber Eats or Grubhub or anything. And I don't want to sound ungrateful, because at the end of the month we are able to save something, right? But it's not nearly enough to save up for a down payment on a freaking house. And if we did decide to go that route, it would take us, I calculated it, like 12 years of just doing absolutely nothing with our lives, like just staying at home, doing nothing. And I'm not willing to spend the next 12 years completely restricting myself for the dream, the possibility of a dream of getting to buy a home. Like, these are the best years of my life. I want to live them. And even if we did that and we saved for 12 years and we put a down payment on a house, we could not afford a nice one. Our mortgage would still cost more than my rent currently. So I'd essentially be paying more for a shittier living situation than I have now. And I feel like everyone's in this situation. And so my question is, like, if we have babies, which it seems a lot of us are not willing to do that right now, which I totally understand. So if we have them, like, I feel like we're just gonna see children raised in like communal living more. More families are gonna have to make do with smaller spaces. And I think we're just gonna see that because people acclimate, people are flexible. Because I'm genuinely not seeing a way to get this done without like completely derailing my life. Because I gotta keep paying bills, I gotta keep paying rent, I gotta keep eating, I gotta keep going places. And if I'm doing that, I just can't save that much money on the side. I love it here. I love it here so much.
I feel like she relates to a lot of people around the country right now. Along with what she said at the end, that's why a whole bunch of people are not having kids, because they just can't afford it. And I mean, she did talk about what I was saying in the last comment, saying that a lot of other cultures' families live together for longer periods of time. It's not just right after high school or right after college, they move out and try to live on their own. And it seems like that might be the way to go in the future if housing prices still keep climbing and getting worse. And with everything she said, all of the cutbacks that she had, I bet the only takeaway that you could, I guess, improve then would be the two very average incomes. Like she said, it would just be the, oh, just make more money type of thing. And clearly that's an easier said than done, but we do have another clip talking about a job that I would venture to guess that most people would say would be a very comfortable and safe job to get into, especially if you got a degree for it in college.
When we take a look at some data from the BLS and the FHFA, they found out that salaries have fallen by an average of 8.2% since 2019. At the same time, inflation has gone up like 25 to 30%. And those are modest estimates, but they actually give some specific examples of careers that are doing the worst right now when it comes to keeping up with inflation. And some of them might be surprising, especially this first one. When I read this, I was surprised to hear that when you're in the engineering field, even though people in engineering make six-figure salaries, when adjusted for inflation, their pay is going down some of the most out of all of the jobs categories. According to this report, the 5-year average salary change for engineers is down 11.59%, even though most engineers make over $100,000 a year. And when you break it down into certain types of engineers, like biomedical engineers, they have suffered a 17% plunge in salary over the past 5 years.
So if you heard somebody getting an engineering degree or somebody in your family, you know, your kids going for it, I don't think anybody would ever say, oh, that's not a good idea. You're not going to make a lot of money. That's like a guaranteed, pretty difficult degree, but a job nonetheless that you can make a solid amount of money. And then you start seeing these statistics coming out, seeing how much they're actually losing. 17%? That's insane. So I mean, I don't know how long this circus could last. I don't know if there's just so many upper class people with a solid amount of money that could just keep bringing the market up on houses higher and higher, or will all of these sitting inventory finally crumble and people start undercutting each other and finally start dropping the prices of houses? I bet that's what a lot of people are hoping for, instead of the first situation where magically just more and more pretty wealthy people could just overpay for a house and not really feel the financial issues with that. So leave your comments down below what you think of some of these clips and some of the experiences, along with the statistics that have recently come out in the past month. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, and I'll talk to you guys later.